Welcome to the Women in Work podcast, where we talk about the challenges and the solutions women face as they pursue their career among all the other demands in their life. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of MomSub, the marketplace app to find, arrange, and manage providers that is bringing childcare benefits to the workplace. Today, I'm welcoming Stephanie Cecil.
Thanks, Diane.
Stephanie, I'm so glad you're joining us to share your experiences and those of your colleagues. Let's jump in right away and start with some of the issues women in your organization are facing. What do you see as one of the big challenges right now for women who are in the workplace?
Thank you, Diane. I'm excited to be here. I would say there's several, right? So one is childcare, obviously, for those that have children, being able to find reliable childcare, dependable childcare, people that they trust to watch their children. I would say also mental health, right? There's so many demands on women in the workplace. And so I feel like the mental health aspect, especially in the last few years, has become a little bit more noticeable in the workplace. I think that COVID helped highlight that. So a lot of schools closed, parents were, having to scramble to homeschool children, and a lot of that fell on the women, on the moms. And so I've seen that as a huge challenge as well. And I think just juggling day-to-day life, right? We're all busy, and especially in our workplaces, I think we're asked to do more with less. Every year it seems that we think, okay, that's going to slow down, and then it never slows down. It only gets busier.
Yes. So in the human resources department, what can you do to help women meet some of those challenges head on and find ways to work through them and overcome them?
I think that it's really bringing the issues to light. In our organization, most of our senior team are males, and we do have female representation, but the majority are males, and most of us are past our childbearing years, so we're not having younger kids. And I think sometimes we forget the struggles that we faced back then. And so it's really listening to employees, listening to where their struggles are, and then looking at solutions that we can incorporate into the workplace. And so really just kind of telling their stories to the executives, to the senior team, and not just saying, well, we have these problems, but we have these problems and here's a handful of solutions. Some cost more than others, and what can we do that doesn't necessarily break the bank, but that will help our employees navigate through all of the challenges that they have.
That's interesting what you said about your peer group. So you're talking about the executives at the organization, correct? And so many of them face those challenges, but years ago. And even though challenges can oftentimes have consistent, the way they look and feel, they're different depending on the time that we're in, right? Like you said, during the pandemic, things were different. Post-pandemic, with remote and hybrid work and different demands on our time, and everyone's got to check email and social media and everything all the time. There's different demands than maybe some of the executives who faced issues like that years ago didn't have. And so how many employees overall are there in your organization? What percent do you think are women? And of those women, are the majority of them in a different situation than maybe the executives are? And how do you communicate that to those people who are a little out of touch, so to speak, because they're not dealing with it day to day?
So we are just under 200 employees, but scattered in multiple locations. And so very, very rural communities with like 900 people in a town. The next closest town is, maybe an hour away to bigger cities like Boise or Idaho Falls. And we just looked at this a few weeks ago. So our female population is about 57% of our employees. So more than half. And the majority of those are the Gen Z and millennial generation. And so either just starting into kind of that, am I going to have children, and what is that going to look like? Or maybe they're getting married, or whatever the case may be. And then most of our seniors are either Gen X or in that boomer generation, right? So that older generation, it's been several years. I mean, even for me, my baby is almost 30. He will be 30 this year. So it's been a hot minute, right? I still remember the struggles. I still remember, some of the things that I had to do, but it was a different world back then as well. And so I think now, with the pandemic, a lot of places closed, businesses closed. And so maybe people had to shift what they were doing. So they may have been doing one thing during the pandemic. Maybe they were wait staff or something, and now they've had to shift into some other career type. And so we've seen a lot of that as well, like people just shifting careers and trying to navigate, oh, now I'm going to have a 9 to 5 job. What does that look like? How, I can't just take a random afternoon off and have it be okay. And so it has really changed just a lot of, what I think people struggle with.
And what are some of the things that your organization has tried that have worked and that haven't worked? I think it really helps for others who are in similar positions to understand that so we can all share with each other, right?
Right. Well, I'm excited that effective August 1st, so we're getting there. We will have paid parental leave for the first time. And so we're starting out with 4 weeks, which for a brand new policy, I mean, I was hopeful for 2. I'm ecstatic that we have 4. And so that's something new, and it'll, men and women. So we want our employees to have time to bond with their children, to be able to figure out the childcare issues and all of the things that come along with being a new parent, or, adding another sibling to the mix. And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited. We haven't launched it yet, but I have 2, 3, 4 expectant mothers in the next 6 months. And so I'm, they don't know yet that this benefit is going to be out there. So I'm really excited to announce that. So that's one of the things that we're doing. I think that also just being understanding. We have really started training managers on empathy, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy, right? And yes, I can sympathize with somebody, but can I really place myself in their shoes and understand what it's like and what they're going through? And so, yes, we have a business to run. Yes, we absolutely need to be there for our members, for our customers, but what can we as leaders do to be able to support our employees? And so that's one of the initiatives that we started about 6 months ago, is just really doing some training for managers. Like, let's talk about it. What are your struggles? And yeah, you want to write this employee up because of this, but have you had these conversations, or do we know the why? And really getting into the why. And maybe it's that we need to adjust their schedule a little bit, if we can do that. And so if this person can come in a half an hour later, they won't be late anymore because of the childcare issues that they're having, or the commute issues, whatever that looks like. And so really just trying to understand our employees, where they're coming from. I think that the narrative of people don't want to work anymore is false. I think they do want to work. They just need to be able to have maybe some more flexibility, or some other, things that we can add to help with that.
I feel like people want to work, but they don't want all the stress. And there are ways to eliminate some of the stress with little things that a company could do. I love what you said about, if they're late consistently, maybe we just shift their schedule so they come in a half hour later. There may have been a time back in the day when people said you have to have your butt in the seat at a certain time, and that's not fair to someone else if you come in later. But if you're working the same amount of hours, you're producing the same amount of output, and you're less stressed, you're actually going to be more productive. You're going to want to stay in your job. And that brings me to a question about the cost. You mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of things we can do, we want to do, but the company has to evaluate, what it costs. But a lot of times when a company spends money, it's more of an investment, sometimes an investment that may pay off in the future. But do you anticipate that this leave that you're implementing will have a specific return on the investment? Because we know that's going to cost the company money. Do you think that retention will go up? Do you think you'll have an easier time recruiting people, that you won't have to spend as much on interviewing and training? What do you think could be a return for a company to do something like that?
I think it's all of the above. So in recruiting, I've been doing a lot of sourcing, which isn't something I do normally. So sourcing candidates, we've had We've had some manager positions open up and some higher level roles that we're just not getting organic applicants. So I have put on my recruiter hat the last few months and have been talking to potential candidates. And, you know, they ask, what is your paid parental leave policy? And when I say we don't have one, that is not the answer that they want. And so they, you know, move on, right? They don't come back. One of the other things that we've done, in addition to adding paid parental leave, is we're changing our leave schedule. So right now you have to work for 5 years. You get 2 weeks a year that you accrue for the first 5 years. So it takes 5 years before you get additional leave. Well, our average tenure is 3.9 years. And so people are leaving, they're only earning that 2 weeks. And one of the things that we have found in our employee engagement surveys that people want that work-life balance. And so they want more time off. They don't want to use their sick leave for a vacation day, you know, and call in sick because they know it hurts the team, but they also need this day off for whatever reason. And so we are changing our accruals. And so now, once you hit 2 years, 7 months, you get another week. Once you hit 5 years, you'll now get 4 weeks. And so we are ramping that up to give people the time off they need and how we are paying for it. So when I went to the senior team and said, this is something that we really need to do, here's the why, like here's our demographics, here are the questions that we are getting asked routinely when we're recruiting. So it's not just a hiring issue, it's a retention issue. I also knew I had to pay for it, right? Budgets are a little bit tighter this year, and asking for something that we project will cost about $100,000 a year isn't, you know, I can't just go and ask for an extra 100K. And so one of the things that we do is we pay out your vacation. So you leave the company, if you have 100 hours of vacation, if you have 200 hours of vacation saved up that you haven't used, we pay it out at 100%, which is great, except that I'm paying somebody that's now leaving. And so how we're going to pay for it is if you have less than a year with us, you don't get your vacation paid out. If you have less than 5 years with us, we'll pay out your vacation, but we're going to pay it out at 50%. And if you have less than 10 years, we'll pay it out, but at 75. And then once you've been with us 10 years, you've earned it, and you can, you know, so it will save us money. And, you know, you kind of have to guess what people are going to do. But when, you know, we ran the numbers, I did kind of a high and a low. I think that will help us pay for the leave. And so it wasn't just a, hey, we need to add this benefit. And, you know, I know it's going to maybe upset a few people, but if they're upset, then it means that they're probably 1 foot out the door anyway. And I need to be able to attract and retain my employees that are invested in the organization. And so we're going to invest in them while they're here. And so that was the justification for that. And so I'm hoping that, you know, we don't lose people because of it, but I think that, you know, adding those additional benefits are going to, you know, who doesn't want an extra week of vacation? And so I feel like that's going to help add to our retention and also our recruitment strategies.
Wow. I love the creativity that you brought to the challenge and the solution. And, you know, a lot of people wouldn't think of a human resources manager as creative, but that is certainly creative. So I wonder how involved you were in sort of coming up with that idea of, okay, I really want this benefit because I know that people are asking for it both at the organization and people thinking of coming here. And I know it's going to cost, and I've got to come up with justification or somewhere in the budget. You know, what made you a champion of doing that? And what's your why of why you fight hard? Because I would imagine you have to be a champion of some of these policies to get them to go through, because they sort of originate with you, right, Stephanie?
Correct. And so, yeah, this was kind of my baby, right? It was more of a, okay, we're having retention issues. We do an engagement survey. We were doing it once a year. We're now starting to do it twice a year. So we'll have another one in August. But really, like, okay, we get the information, but then what do we do with it? And we've done some things, but not, I don't think anything big and drastic that is, okay, let's just completely revamp how we think about this. We did talk about unlimited PTO, but that was shut down. That was shut down several months ago. And there's, you know, pros and cons, I think, to that. I know people that have unlimited PTO and it's made them actually take less vacation because they're afraid of, you know, people thinking that they're overusing it. And I know people that take it as, I can just not come to work Mondays and Fridays because I have unlimited PTO. So there are pros and cons to that solution. But for this one, it was, okay, we need to do something, right? Something needs to change. Our turnover rate is not super great. Some of it is manager, issues, which we are addressing, but that is something that is a little bit slow going. And I can talk to you about how you need to empathize with your employees and kind of give you tools to do that, but I can't make you be that manager. And so there are some things I can change, and there are some things that we just have to chip away at it. This was something big that I thought, you know what, we can do this, and here's how we can pay for it, right? We give this really great benefit when you leave. Now, there are 2 states that we have employees in other states. So California and Colorado, if you have 180 hours when you leave and you've been with us for 6 months, you get your 180 out, right? Like I can't, those are 2 states that we can't do that for, but the rest of the states that we're in, we're okay. And so it's really just paying attention to that, knowing what you can do legally if you're in multiple states, and coming up with a solution that I feel like is going to benefit the majority of our employees and give everybody a little bit more work-life balance. And I think that shows that we care, right? We care about you when you're here, but we also want you to have time away from the office to be able to do it in a meaningful way and to just, kind of relax and, get those mental health days, as I call them, that you really need. So.
That's wonderful. And I wonder what you would share with other human resources directors who tell you, I want to do some of the things that you've done, but I just keep getting pushback, and I don't know how to go forward. How do you stay motivated? How do you keep going? It sounds like this effort didn't just happen overnight. You've been pushing for this for a while. So what did you do to stay strong and to stay committed to that end goal? And how do you think that you were able to achieve it when others may feel like I'm just not getting there?
So I'm data driven, right? I'm people driven, but I'm also data driven. And so I went to the numbers. What are our turnover rates? Why are people leaving? I looked at the last 2 years worth of survey results, and our benefits were like, oh, they're okay, but it wasn't the medical, dental, vision. We do really well with that. It was the leave benefits. It was, I don't have time to take care of this. I don't have time to take care. Those were the comments that we were getting. And so we weren't really looking at that. And so it was looking at that, looking at our demographics. Where are people at? Well, the Gen Xers, for the most part, are not having kids anymore. The boomers are not having kids anymore. And so it's really that Gen Z millennial population that we have to look at, right? And so looking at what their needs are. And so I took our data and said, okay, if I can condense it into the different generations, this is the group of people that are really saying, I need more of this, and here's why. And so, just kind of looking at the numbers, coming up with a solution, right? So it's, I could have gone and said, hey, we need to do this. It's going to cost $100,000. I knew that was going to be a no. I've only been with the company. It'll be 2 years in September. But I have learned that, my CFO, my CEO, all of those guys are just very numbers driven. And if you come with the problems and without the solution, you're going to walk away with nothing. And so because there are some other things that I proposed that got shot down early on, and I was a little disappointed, but I was like, okay, this is why they shot it down. So if I have other things that I want to propose, I'm going to have to do some more work. And so it did take some work. It took some graphs and some charts and just really talking about the data. And when I first proposed even the leave, our chief information officer was like, we're in kind of a budget crunch this year, and this sounds really expensive. And I said, just wait, I have a plan. And so we went through, and then I got to the end and I said, and here's how I'm going to pay for it, right? Here's my proposal for us to pay for this solution. And they were like, oh, well, yeah, no, that actually sounds really good. And a lot of the ones in the room haven't been here for 5 years. They haven't been here for 10 years. So if they leave the organization, it impacts them as well, right? They're not going to get paid out their full, if they have vacation set. And so really just looking kind of aside from their situation and saying, this is what's right for the company. And this is what's right for our employees. And they're going to come out as the winners, because when we announce it, it's, HR in combination with the senior team has come out with it. And so I think that that's going to give them a little bit of a boost among the organization as well. And it really was a group effort. It wasn't just me saying, this is what we're going to do. It was, here's what I want to do. Here's why I want to do it. And here's how I propose we pay for it. So really touching all of those things.
That's really inspiring. And I think that helps other people to just hear, if they're still in the middle of this fight, there's a way out and a way forward. and try different things and speak in their language to the people that you have to bring on board. I love that idea. When people hear about all these things, they know that there's issues out there, but sort of clarifying what it is that's going on and then how you attacked it. And I love how you really explained how you got to that end goal.
It's been a long process, but I'm glad to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, an exciting time. So exciting for you to share that, like right at this time. And if you want to hear more about the Women in Work podcast, you can go to momsub.com and look up our blog. We invite you to share it. And we are on a mission to reduce your stress, your mom guilt, your self-criticism, and increase your calm, your confidence, and clarity. And we can do that by all helping each other. So when you see another woman, share your love with her, let her know that you support her. And that goes a long way for all of us to feel better in the workplace and in life. We thank you for joining us. I'm Diane Mocha, and we will see you next time.